Everybody, thank you. Welcome to Foxborough's Board of Selectmen, March 26th, 2013. I'll go over the agenda. At 7 o'clock, we had citizens' input in anything that's not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. At 7:05, we have Chairman's update. At 7:10, Town Manager Kevin Pecos and Randy Scollins, our Chief Financial Officer, is going to discuss the CIP budget, the Capital Improvement Planning budget. At 7:30, Kevin Pecos and Randy Scollins also going to talk about the fiscal year 14 operating budget. At 8 p.m., the board is going to enter into executive session for 3 reasons. Collective bargaining strategy to negotiate with non-union personnel, and the third is to review a whole bunch of executive session minutes. And then we have a few action items in between. So, Kevin, you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you ask me to?
Yeah. You didn't hear it.
Well, I did, and then I said, wait a minute, did he say that? And I didn't want to start, because that would have been rude if it wasn't me.
I thought that was a strategy you had.
I just sort of froze there for a minute. I locked up. Thanks, Lorraine.
I'm like, what's the matter?
Get saved by the clerk again.
Okay, anyone for citizens' input being a little after 7 o'clock? We just asked if you could just come to the microphone and introduce yourself. Wherever you're comfortable.
John Spinney, 24 Windsor Drive, and I'm also a member of the advisory committee. And I'm here just to present to the board in person the letter I sent to the board today via email regarding the tax increment financing for Invincest. It's been discussed a lot, and I asked for some information from the finance director, Randy. Randy gave it to me, and did a little bit of research of my own and put the letter together to the board. Essentially, and I don't know if everybody has a copy, but you know.
I have mine, John.
Thank you.
No.
You good, Jenny?
I'm also. Yep.
What I just handed out was a letter I sent to the Board of Selectmen. I'm now handing out my little makeshift model I did the other day in my office. Oh, sorry, Jim. Thanks. And, well, I need something to look at, Frank.
Oh, that's yours. Sorry. Excuse me, guys.
Sorry. I'll give you one. And basically, you know, when this TIF thing came up, you know, I've managed a lot of commercial real estate in my life. We've done projects. We've looked at TIFs. We looked at 121A agreements and things like that. And I was very concerned because, you know, these things do cost the town a lot of money, and they really have to be negotiated, and they really have to be thought through and modeled. And there's a lot of gamesmanship and things like that that go on with these things. I.e., if we don't get what we want, we're going to move our people to Texas and things like that. So I'm not against them per se. I think to be, you know, good to an employer that's been in the town for 100 years is certainly something the board should consider and a town meeting should consider. However, I had 2 major concerns that I addressed in the letter. One was providing a 4-year 100% exemption on the additional value that they were putting into the properties. And in my little model I handed out, I put a little more, I'd say, balanced structure to the TIF in place, where instead of giving 100% exemption, you give 100 in the first 4 years, you give 100% in year 1, and decrement that schedule by 1/15 for the next 14 years till it gets down to 0, similar to what they're proposing currently. However, in doing so, the town would end up collecting about $350,000 more in taxation, and it would at least provide anywhere from $12,000 to $30,000 in those few years. They would be getting nothing, and quite frankly, that could mean a new cruiser. It could mean a bunch of other things for the town. So I think being balanced and fair is important, and I think in the end, they'll end up getting significant tax reduction as a result of what I've proposed versus what's currently being discussed at the committee. The second thing that I wrote in the letter related to entering into a TIF was, to the extent that this company decides to do a sale leaseback on the current property that they're in, that they own, it would be nice for the town to be able to have the ability to renegotiate, because now if they enter into a sale leaseback, they do a 20-year lease, the underlying property is going to go up significantly if there's a 20-year lease or 15-year lease. And you're talking about, a credit tenant with a low cap rate environment. Certainly, I think to be more value than what's currently being assessed over there. And I didn't want the town to miss the opportunity to at least revisit that with them in terms of, their assessment going forward, and at least give ourselves some ability to talk to them again. And the same thing would apply in the current building they lease. I can't remember if it's Cocasset Street or one of the ones over there by Ponce Street. The other building that they lease, that could go into what's called a blend and extend situation, where their current lease would be, if it's near its end, say there's 2 years left, let's do another 15-year lease, get that locked, get the Foxborough company or Invincest locked in, and then all of a sudden, that building is worth a lot more than it was last week because, if they decided to move to Texas, the value of the building would have went down. But if they stay and they extend for 15 years and there's a steady rent stream to that building, that would certainly provide more value to the owner. I didn't get a chance to check with the assessor's office who the owner is of that building, but clearly I'll look into that and see who it is. I'm not sure if it's a related REIT or some other entity that has tax benefits that inure to the company. The third point I made in here is with respect to some expert help in doing this, and when the committee was formed, I was curious why there was nobody on the advisory committee, quite frankly. But that's okay. I took it upon myself to do a little bit of work, and I also thought the town should have hired an independent consultant, not somebody that's currently working on a project for us, that currently works with the applicant's person to do these things, and just go out and find somebody that's independent. And in my years at KPMG, I was a partner there, and I worked with a bunch of guys in the state and local tax group that did tax incentives for clients and municipalities and things like that to guide them. I gave the board this person's name. His name is Scott Butcher. He used to be at KPMG, worked at Duff & Phelps, and now he's independent on his own. And I know he's done TIFs or 121As for State Street, for Unum, and some other big companies. So he certainly knows the other side of the transaction, which is kind of what you want to be able to bring to bear from the selectman side. Is what does the company want, and how can we balance that with what the town can afford to give? And certainly, it sounds like from what I hear that we want to be good, good people to a tenant that's been, or a taxpayer that's been here for 108 years. In the same token, I just want to make sure that the town doesn't end up with a long-term problem with respect to two things. One, a bad negotiation of the first TIF we ever do in the town, and then this TIF being really kind of the baseline TIF for any other TIFs that are done in town. So if we give away a 4-year exemption at 100%, the next person in here, say it's the Kraft Group, for example, I got to imagine they're going to want most favored nation status. You gave those guys 4 years, we want 5 or 6. And it just doesn't make any sense to me economically. And so those are the points I wanted to raise tonight. I understand through the chairman that I think this is going to be on the agenda maybe next week, and I'll have another chance to talk about it, or maybe people will tell me I'm wrong, and this is the best TIF we're ever going to see that we currently have in front of us. But I do strongly wish that the board would hire somebody like Scott to advise them, and at least do something other than take what's just presented to us and presented to us with with an advisor that works closely with the applicant's advisor. That's all I have.
Yep, thanks, John.
Yeah.
And just so, I mean, there's probably some answers on that, but unfortunately, because of the open meeting law, well, fortunately, because of the open meeting law, there can't be any dialogue because it doesn't meet any of the criteria to be on, if it's not on the agenda. But what I do know is, I mean, we do have a committee. We haven't had the details; they're not public yet. So this is scheduled to be on our April 2nd meeting, and it's going to be in our packets on Friday. If we can make a copy available for John and the advisory committee, and they can participate on the April 2nd meeting. I'm assuming we're going to have the committee and a spokesman for the committee present
I'm
all the findings.
anticipating, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that the proposal, as you know, the proposal hasn't been made yet. So I think once the committee reports, and we will be reporting to you in writing on Friday with the committee's report, the TIF instrument itself that we recommend, some exhibits to support that. And then next week, we have a presentation to make to the board in several parts. And I think once all the facts are known publicly, some of the concerns that John addressed, I think will be, John raised will be well addressed. And I think, once the proposal is actually public, I think a lot of the concerns will be alleviated.
Okay. So we'll make a copy available for John on Friday as well.
We will, Mr. Chairman. I have a very broad distribution on the on the report because I think it'll be a topic of great interest to many boards, all the department heads, and we're going to make it available to as many citizens with copies here at the window as may be interested, and we'll bring a big stack of them next week for folks that might show up and would like them.
Great, thank you. And thank you, John. And a quick under chairman's update, just to give you an idea of some of the stuff. Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm sorry, I should have asked.
I'm
Yep.
sorry, I didn't let you know in advance that I would like to speak. Frank Mortimer, 18 Bailey Street. I don't usually get up here and speak in citizens' input. I'm speaking only for myself. And this is regard to the Workout World Fitness Center down in the Foxborough Plaza, which many of us think of it as the old Bradley's Plaza. A couple of concerns I have. I spoke with Bill Caspara today. A secondary concern was what he said was illegal advertising of kind of like these sail-like flags up on Route 1. And he said that he's going to ask them to take them down. Some were taken down today, and there's still some in place. What brought me in to see Bill today, though, was a different matter, which really made me sad. I want to say something first on positive side about the competition between these gyms. We have this fantastic YMCA in Foxborough, which companies like Inventus, the Kraft Group, the Spear family, and who am I leaving out? Inventus have done a lot to make possible, and it's a fantastic place. I think we all agree. And if others want to join in and compete, they should compete honestly and fairly. My concern is that the company, and this is something Bill Caspara said he was aware of, the company advertises for $10 for a monthly membership, and there's other costs and so forth.
Are you talking about Workout World?
Yes, Workout World. Did I misspeak?
I didn't know if you're talking about the YMCA.
Absolutely not the YMCA. I'm talking about Workout World, and I apologize if there's any confusion. I'm talking about Workout World down in the Foxborough Plaza, in the former Bradley's Plaza. And I'm not asking the board to do anything. It's not strictly a board matter, but we do live in this town, and we do have ethical standards that are wonderful in this town. And so they have these signs in 6 different ways. They tell you that it's $10 a month to sign up, and it's on their internet. It's on a truck parked there. It's on those flags I'm telling you about. Sign on the door, cards they give out. And when my wife and I went in there yesterday, they told us verbally it's $10. I try to sign up, and the only place $10 doesn't show up as the monthly amount is on my credit card. And I raised an objection to that, and they said, no, you can't get it for $10. I won't go into the details, but I will say this in parting. It's really, if this is a scheme, if it is a scheme, it's a very clever one because it's only $1 more than your $10 a month, which most people, unlike me, might be ashamed to even speak about it. But I have no shame, and here I am. So I'm just letting you know about this concern. I did speak to the person there yesterday and my wife and asked them, how come we can't get the amount you're advertising? They said, no, you absolutely can't. And they reversed my credit charge and said goodbye. I spoke to Bill Caspara today, and he said he heard from a man in Foxborough who wanted to picket outside Workout World. He came to Bill Caspara as a sign enforcement officer to ask, am I allowed to legally do that? The man, that's not my style. I apologize for the length of my remarks here, and again, I'm not asking for any remarks. I know that's not your agenda, nor is it your enforcement area. I am getting in touch with the Attorney General to see if I'm misunderstanding anything. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but it seemed fairly plain. $10.
Okay.
I have the receipts in my pocket.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Frank. Appreciate that.
If I could just, Frank, just a suggestion. Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Division.
Thank you.
They will look into it, I guarantee you.
Okay.
And WBZ call for action, I guarantee you they'll also look into
Okay.
it. And if things are as you're saying, I'm quite sure they are.
Well-
Only because I experienced the same thing and was quite perturbed by it.
At the same place or some other place?
Same place.
Oh, wow.
Exact same circumstances.
Well,
And again, like you, I'm very concerned with the deceptiveness of it. So if you call and others call, I'll call. And I guarantee you, they will look into it, and I'll bet you dollars of donuts in a very short time. The advertising will change, or the buck will come off, one or the other.
very good, Kevin. Thank you so much. Thank you, folks, for listening to me. It's
And
not
I've,
really.
by the way, heard, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, believe it or not, from a half a dozen people in town about this very same thing.
Oh, you have?
Who are really aggravated by it just because, it's $1, so it's not, it's $12 a year. But on the other hand, why wouldn't you just say 11 bucks? Why don't you say 10 and have people go in there?
And-
what is that?
And I'm repeating myself, then I'm going to sit down. And again, the beauty of that scheme, if it is indeed a scheme, is that, yeah, it's only $12 a year, year after year, multiplied each month by thousands, potentially thousands of members.
Exactly.
And I went to their website. They have sites in Massachusetts, out of state. I don't know what the others in Massachusetts do. I'm just speaking about my experience in Foxborough. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. All right, some of the, couple things coming up. Again, thank you for the Racino Committee. They're meeting Thursday in this room at 6:30. Those are the 7 volunteers. So, Kevin, thank you for, you rounded them up and going to get them started. On April 2nd, which is next Tuesday's meeting, this meeting tonight was a special meeting, so it's not on the agenda. But next Tuesday's meeting is on our schedule. We will obviously be talking about the TIF agreement, the warrant articles 1 through 5, 7 through 18, 28, and 29. We have asked our town manager to prepare his own self-evaluation, which he's going to present to the board for the last year's work. And then we're going to go into executive session for discussion and a follow-up of the Sheehan update. On April 16th, we've got planning board coming in to talk about the planning and zoning articles. We're going to have a presentation on the sexual abuse reporting policy that we've began in January. And as I said, April 2nd, Kevin's going to come in and give us his self-evaluation. We're going to take 2 weeks to do our own, and then we're going to come back and present that or discuss it on April 16th. And Lorraine has sent out the contracts and the forms, so hopefully everything comes together by the 16th. That's all I have for an update. And next on the agenda, we have the CIP budget presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we've given you the recommendations. The members of the committee are actually here, the superintendent of schools. Randy serves as ex officio member, myself as chairman, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen is a member, Larry, the chairman of the AdCom, is a member, and the DPW director, delegated by the Water Sewer Commission, is also here. So the 5 voting members are here. Randy as well. And we've also got most of the department heads that have requests in here. So we can handle any questions that the board might have. You have the report. The good news is, due to some very fortuitous circumstances with the operating budget this year, i.e. the $500,000 variance between revenue and what we brought the budget at, we had a substantial amount of extra dollars this year, $230,000 to be exact, I believe, to put toward capital spending, which ordinarily might have gone toward the operating budget, but we're able to bring that in. So we're able to do about $230,000 more of capital spending this year than we ordinarily could. And with the rest of the package that Randy put together so very expertly, as he always does, we were able to fund essentially all of the capital budget requests this year, except for those that were really made more of an advisory, future expense things that are coming. And so I think that's very good news, and there's a lot of progress in a variety of areas. Rather than try to go through it all, which I think would be very lengthy, take a lot of time, I think it'd be more efficient to answer any questions that the board might have. If Randy or I can't answer them, as I say, we've got lots of folks here that are subject matter experts, and I think we can answer any questions you might have. By the way, the board had asked me to check on the timing, and I'll simultaneously report this to you and to Larry as chairman of the AdCom. What we found is that the posting for the town meeting and the election warrant is simultaneous. It's the same document. It's the warrant. With the election moved up 1 week this year to April 30th, the deadline for the posting is April 19th in order to make the legal requirements. When we bid the printing of the warrant and the town report, we bid them together in order to get a better price for the town. And Sandra does that. She's been doing an excellent job, and we get great pricing. She's actually managed to make the cost go down each year. However, that comes with the caveat that we promise the printer 2 weeks from the delivery of the copy, the computer-made copy, to when he has to return it back here. So if you back off 2 weeks from the 19th, you come back to April 5th, I think it is, Friday the 5th. So that is the absolute drop-dead deadline that we have for any votes of the Board of Selectmen and the AdCom that you want to have appear in the warrant. The primary votes, obviously, are the budget and the capital budget. Now, what that means is that the Board of Selectmen, hopefully, will act tonight on the CIP and the operating budget. We'll report that to AdCom, who then will have tomorrow night and or next Wednesday night to act. But next Wednesday night practically is the deadline because Randy needs at least a day in order to put it all together into the formula, make sure it balances, everything is correct, before we literally hand it to the printer at about 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And then he, by contract, must deliver it no later than the 19th. And the first few copies actually are the ones that get given to the chief, and he takes them around and posts them in 6 public places, et cetera. So that is the process. I'm sorry we couldn't get you more time than that, but that's the legal requirement that we went through with great precision and detail. So again, if the board can vote tonight, then the AdCom gets the benefit of the board's votes, which they like to have, and then AdCom will hopefully vote tomorrow night or next Wednesday. Randy will put it together Thursday to the printer on Friday. Okay.
Just next Wednesday, I mean the next Wednesday.
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Okay.
And then the
All right,
5th
that makes
Friday
sense.
is the deadline.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, thank you.
So that, we'll be happy to answer questions by exception. I think that'll be more efficient for the board than, trying to give you a half-hour report.
Okay. So, a couple things. Randy, I think it might be helpful if you kind of give us a bird's eye view, and I sat on the CIP and understand it, but does the board understand the process and where we came up on that line? If you could just maybe give 2 or 3 minutes on that. I think that puts it in a broader perspective of what we're looking at.
Sure. What we do is try to bring some order to the process. It's a process whereby you have four different officials from the town who are voting, their priority on all of the requests that are being made by all the different departments. So what we do is we do what I will call the equivalent of a non-price price approach to the process. So before we understand how far our dollars go, we hear all the presentations from the various department heads requesting capital, and after hearing all of that, the 5 voting members independently rank what they believe their respective rank in order of importance are of these projects, scale 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. And then I tabulate them independently, bring them back, show them sort of a forced ranking within fund, because there's the general fund, there's ambulance receipts, there's water receipts, sewer receipts, if that was applicable, and then there's highway funding as well. And so we look at a forced rank within that, and then I bring forward recommended funding in each of those areas. And it's a recommendation that is made in order to not overcommit the town, to maintain our reserve levels, because it certainly is possible to overexpend or to borrow for these smaller items. If it's not a building project, typically we're not borrowing. We're using cash resources. That's the way that the town has been managed historically, and that's why we have our very conservative approach to funding these items. And so I make a recommendation on funding, and then the group looks at the forced rank order of what the aggregate of all 5 have independently voted, and then there's discussion about how much of the item should be funded, whether there should be any further discussion beyond what the ranking shows, move things up or down based on discussion and need for priority, and then we settle that ultimately, and the board takes a vote on their recommendation, which they've done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? I can go over the items quickly, or if you've had a chance, if you had any questions.
I think the audience would like to know that we're doing it at home,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that in my packet.
You had
This
it
was in
last
the,
week.
It's part of, last
Good.
week's.
We'll make
Part
a
of the
copy
budget.
for you.
I didn't bring mine, can you make a copy for me too?
Sure.
But operating in the CIP,
It's in last week's packet.
It's in the,
it was in last week's,
yeah, that's it, on the front page of that.
So, Jim, will we hear about each item, or, is it that we, I'd like to hear some more about the really big ticket items?
Yeah, the way the CIP process worked, we met on a Saturday for about 6 hours, and then we didn't quite finish, and we met on the following Friday afternoon for a couple more hours, so all the presentations were 8 or 10 hours. We had asked the department heads to be available if there's specific items that jump out. And I can go through these quickly, and if anyone wants to grab something, we'll check it off, and then we'll ask a department head to present on that. So under the different ones, we had the town and school phone and email replacement system for $300,000. Under the police, we had an unmarked SUV and a marked cruiser. I won't go through the numbers because you have them there. And a patrol wagon. Under the fire department, under vehicles and equipment, there was a second-year payment for the scuba equipment, the self-contained breathing apparatus for fire that was initiated the year before. Under public safety, we had vehicles and equipment, 48 computer software server upgrades for the public safety building. Under public works, bucket truck, dump truck, pickup, and a generator, trailer-mounted generator. And under the infrastructure, we had every year, the Chapter 90 roads program is in this, and some street reconstruction, and those are funded by under the meals tax receipt. Council on Aging, a number of years they've asked for a van, and we were able to put that in the CIP program this year. And then public schools, under the vehicles and equipment, they had computers, software network upgrades for the computers at the schools. 2 school buses, 77-passenger school buses, and security camera systems. don't know, was that presented last, there was a separate presentation here?
There were two presentations. It was initially discussed on the Saturday, and then they presented again.
On
the
CIP,
Friday.
but they didn't come in front of this. I just
No.
had in my mind that they did.
No.
Oh, it was in the paper, that's where I saw it, sorry.
Right.
Wireless computer modems for the high school, 28-passenger minibus, 4 copiers, and some keyboard equipment for the band at the school. And under the water department, rehabilitation of water tanks, water system improvement and rehab, replace a generator and associated equipment, and some valve exercising, repairing trailer equipment. So there's a column on how much this is, and it comes out to 3.6 million. And the funding source, whether it's from free cash or insurance proceeds or Chapter 90 or meals tax, that's also tabulated in the far right column. And then it's summarized under the fiscal year 14 budget of the probably a dozen or so funding sources, and again, tabulating up to the 3.6 million. And I see representatives from the police and schools and DPW and fire here in town, so we can ask everybody or nobody or a couple people to come up.
I just wanted to ask Randy, can you explain where it's, says overlay surplus? Can you just explain what that?
Sure. Overlay, for starters, is an amount that we're required by the Department of Revenue annually to reserve against taxes. So when we raise real estate taxes every year, we're required to reserve a certain amount for exemptions, people who are entitled to exemptions, widows, spouse, veterans, et cetera, and for abatements. You know, people, the DOR wants the Board of Assessors to be able to take cases, people who believe that their value is disproportionate and want it to be addressed, and we have to have the money to refund somebody who maybe wins an abatement appeal. So we have annually each year, that's a required amount to reserve, and then as the years go by, and that's the only thing it can be used for unless it's voted differently.
Yeah.
But as the years go by and, tax years and tax cases are settled, then there are amounts that are residual, that are left over in these accounts. And so, part of my role is to, survey all of the various funds, as you can see, that we have here, that could be available for, and these are one-time monies. They're not recurring monies. We don't
Right.
know how each year is going to be from an abatement perspective. So I try to identify, working with the Board of Assessors, amounts that I believe are no longer required to settle any cases, and I ask the Board of Assessors to officially vote those amounts out of overlay, and then I propose it here to the CIP committee, consideration for funding for these projects. And in this case here, it was $50,000 we asked them to release, and that I aligned that
For the
just
patrol,
for the patrol wagon. It just happened to be the same amount as appropriate.
Thanks.
Sure.
And I should just, for the more questions, just to kind of give it a broader perspective, there were 5 members that voted on this: Kevin, myself, Debbie, Spinelli, Roger Hill, and Larry Thomas from AdCom. And I think it was a 4-to-1 vote. And not to speak for Larry, but there was more information that he needed to feel comfortable with. And then also there was some things on the list that, again, as Randy said, we all voted on these as priority, and then had a set budget, so the top priority got picked, and there was a lot of things that didn't get. So some of the things that didn't get funded may reappear next year, as some of these things that we voted didn't get approved last year. So.
What didn't get funded? What wasn't approved this year?
I might have that.
Give that with you, go get it.
Town hall repairs.
There was
There's a
thermal imaging cameras, was one item on the fire department. There was an item, I'm not sure, one of the items in the highway department. It was the
mini excavator.
Mini excavator at $60,000.
And there were some items that showed up here just as a placeholder. For instance, the MSBA feasibility study for Borough. They're not quite there yet, but at least it's on here, so we can say, boy, that's the number that is in our minds for the next go-around.
Yeah, town hall repairs, I think, Jim, you said that, yeah.
I'm sorry if I cut somebody else off. Any more questions on this, or do you want to hear presentations?
What about the town hall repairs? I noticed in the preliminary sheet that it was on it, now it apparently didn't make the cut. What are we doing with town hall? What?
Well, that is the $64 question.
I'll take a stab at that. There was a lot of, there was,
coming down.
yeah. There was a lot of discussion at the CIP, an extraordinary amount, and it's a passionate discussion, and there was a lot of thought on it. What was in the CIP budget was replacing the windows and doors in a roof, okay? Because there's certain levels that you can touch on this building and not trigger other things like seismic and handicapped accessibility and sprinklers and all that stuff. So I think what the administration did is went through with the Bill Caspara and said, this is what you can do before it really doesn't make any sense in a bigger level, because you're putting bad money after, good money after bad. And then we decided to look at that, and that number was $330,000. And then you're at the position where you're going to put, over $250,000 into something that is still unknown. Do we tear it down? Do we renovate it? And it's a pretty big Band-Aid until we can just figure out what to do. And I think everyone at the Selectmen's table, and this was a discussion, we voted to do something with it. And then when we moved forward, there was some opposition with some separate studies. It went right to the door of the AdCom, and at that meeting it got canceled because the post office came up. And I've seen it in a lot of different towns. Unless the town hall has some really historic significance and love in the building, it's a tough thing, because there's not a big advocacy group for a town hall like there would be for the police or the schools or the fire department. So there's nobody raising the flag about what about us. So over the years, and not putting blame on anybody, but from my recollection and my involvement, year after year after year, it hasn't been funded for maintenance, or really, there hasn't been a lot of love been put into the building for whatever reason, and we just keep kicking it down the road, and me included. In the years that I've been on here, we keep trying, but it just doesn't get to the starting line, and we got to address it, and it just hasn't gotten done yet.
That was a perfect segue. So what I'm planning to do, thank you, Jim, because it's probably better than I could have summarized it. What I'm planning to do is present the board, and it's not going to happen until after town meeting because there's way too much research involved to do it. A fresh, new look, which will compare three options. The report that we have to rehab or rebuild town hall, and a lease option, i.e. not doing anything with the building, leasing space somewhere else. AdCom kind of brought that up. But as I explained to AdCom, nobody has ever really gone into the lease option in any detail, because the presumption was we didn't want to move all the folks, all the foot traffic, all the people from town hall, because it's quite an anchor for downtown business. So planning board has been fairly clear in saying that input they've received through the master plan is that people don't want town hall going somewhere else. So there's always been this assumption that the only options were either to tear the building down and rebuild or rehab this building. And we never really talked about leasing. Well, AdCom brought that up in a serious way this year, and of course we didn't have any real good answers. So we've been working on it now for about 3 months, and I think in a couple months we'll be ready to report. And what I would hope is that with the very good possibility of a special town meeting in the fall, because it seems like that's what we need to do now because of the cycle of decision-making. We can't go a whole year without a town meeting, is that this is something we can address in the fall at a special town meeting, once and for all, definitively, and get this done. Make a decision and then go forward because we'll have all the options fully costed out, everything before you. And I think and I'm also going to do one other thing. There's been a significant body of opinion, one from the building committee and the architect, which I happen to have tremendous confidence in because they've shown over and over and over their expertise in doing buildings. That's Bill Yuchner's committee, and they've just done tremendous work. But there's a body of feeling with Dick Haydecker and another a group of citizens in town who have some great experience in the building trades and architectural services about a different point of view. So I'm going to host a meeting and get those folks together and chat about it, see if perhaps there's some kind of compromise we can achieve. If that's possible, then maybe we can all go forward together with one plan. That would certainly be wonderful, if that's possible. Not promising it, but we're going to give it a try. So I think probably after town meeting, late May, June, July, we'll come back to the board with something and it'll be more definitive.
Yep.
So certainly in the interim, with all that looming, nobody wanted to spend $300,000 on town hall and end up having the decision be, we're gonna, potentially tear it down. I mean, it just makes no sense. So we kicked the can down the road a little bit, but I don't think we kicked it very far, that's for sure.
And Dick Haydecker and some of the people in his group did come and actually showed some friendliness to Bill and kind of a consensus to work together. So, I think this is an example. It's nobody's fault and it's everybody's fault. But I think this table has to figure it out to move it somewhere. So I think we got to start taking it seriously one way or the other. So because people. We spend good money to get good staff, and they work here, and it's just, look around, you don't have to see very far. It's the front door to our.
It's terrible.
It's the front door to our town, and it's not getting any better, so. Any other questions on town hall before we move on? And any other questions on the other line items on the CIP?
I wanted to ask if we could hear some more about the largest number really, the town/school phone and email replacement systems, just for the public to get more information on that.
Absolutely. The hodgepodge of phone systems that the town has in the town buildings and the school buildings is just that. It's a hodgepodge of systems and servers and antiquated equipment. It's not conducive to effective communication, across town hall, across the town offices in the schools, it's one of these systems that's absolutely ripe for replacement, and there are some great cost synergies for the town in looking at replacing these phones at this point in time, and Billy and Paul Bortolotti and I have been, doing our homework in this space and looking at various options, and that's how we came up with, with the number that we did. But to get into some specifics, we're looking at 437 phones across the town. There's about 360 on the school side and 77 on the town side. We wouldn't need to do anything with the public safety phones because those are the most modern that we have. And right now we send our traffic using a very old Verizon system called Centrex. Some of you may or may not be familiar with. And the annual bill to the town for just directing our local traffic is over $50,000. That we're paying these charges monthly. The goal of this project would be to eliminate the use of Centrex and leverage the fiber optic network that we installed 5 years ago that connects all of these very same buildings. And we would cut out over $50,000 in expense. There is a maintenance cost associated with these systems, and it's approximately $11,000 annually, again, depending upon the current quotes that we've received. But we're still going to save approximately, our goal is to save approximately $40,000 a year, and the phone component of this number is $215,000. So the goal would be to to have a payback on this within 6 years, and that's a real number. That's a number that every department, we will be able to go in and advise them on the the dollars that they can remove from their phone bills. So that's and there's new technology today that that allows for more efficient communication of voice over internet protocol, VoIP, which would allow things, like voicemails going to interoperable sort of thing. And then just the capabilities of the phones themselves, how you can use them, interoperatively between buildings. And from a security standpoint, there's some great capabilities there as well. Where in essence they can be set up if somebody dials 911. The location, the actual location of that phone, can be transmitted, to the 911 service or to dispatch. And we would be looking to enhance that with possible with panic buttons in appropriate places. So this has been on the list for quite some time, and it's one of those items where we talk about communications, and it's one of those ones that's very ripe. And then in the same vein, our email system, we've gone through several iterations across the town. On the town side of things, we've gone through about 3 different systems just in my tenure here, and the school system saved us the last time around when our last email system failed, and so we piggybacked on their system. I'm not going to name the vendor because that would be unfair, but I believe it's universal that folks on the school side and the town side, we all use the same system, are not satisfied with this system. It's just that the capabilities are poor. There are many drawbacks to it, and there are many good options there. I know the technology folks in the advisory committee have suggested things like Gmail, and I know Bill Eucken has done some research on that. That's a possible option for us to look at. And then there are other hosted solutions as well, because as you know, record retention is important. Everything that travels over the town email systems is a public record, so we have to be very sensitive to that. So there's a lot of good options. That the number that we have associated with that in this $300,000 is an $85,000 number. That assumes an on-premise on-premise solution, meaning we control it. However, a different solution, like possibly the Google Mail system, could be substantially less expensive. We just would prefer not to hamstring the process of our ability to evaluate what is the best system for the town. If we can deliver a good system for cheaper, we will absolutely do that and leave the dollars on the table because they can't go anywhere else, and they would drop back to free cash the following year. But it's another system that we, as I think everybody around this table knows, we rely on very heavily, and it's in need of an upgrade. So phones and email upgrading together, it's finally going to move the communications piece of the capabilities of the town to the 21st century.
So that's school and municipal, and it's going to be all located over in the bunker at the high school that was part of the high school renovations.
Correct.
And all backed up and generator and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah, and that's the these are some of the dividends that are paying off for for Foxborough in terms of having this centrally managed technology. I couldn't be more thankful for Paul and his team for what they do for the town side and the school side, and for what the leadership that Bill provides as well. It's just really worked well, and a lot of other towns would have taken a project like this and separate system for the schools, separate system for town, spent more money. Obviously, Foxborough is smarter than that, and we've got a great system in place to get the biggest bang for our buck out of these technology items.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just 1.3 from the free cash. Can you just explain to folks at home what the free cash is and where it comes from and?
Keep talking, I'm going to get to my notes.
Well, I just think that, folks say free cash, well, why do we have free cash and where did it come from? And
right. We annually target generating a free cash amount in the town. It's one of the hallmarks of our conservative fiscal management approaches. And where it comes from is that we do not fully budget all of our revenues, as you know, and the bulk of the free cash that we generate, or replenish each year, comes from not fully committing all of the local receipts, which are all the different fees and stadium payments, et cetera. Not meals tax because that's non-operating, hotel excise tax, et cetera. All of those items, interest on earnings. All of those items are a substantial number. It's over $8 million a year. It's the, it's the third largest funding source for the town: taxes, state aid, local receipts. So we target to not commit $1.5 million of that, at least what we estimate to be $1.5 million, to replenish free cash by $1.5 million. Other towns, will go and they'll spend every dime that they have because they have to. But we've started early, many years ago, long before I was here, this cycle of creating a free cash pool, and then that gets added to annually by the underspend of budgets. As you know, it's illegal to overspend an appropriated budget, at town meeting, unless the advisory committee provides, some relief or there's another vote at town meeting. So between those sources and some other things that can happen, positive changes on our balance sheet, we typically generate roughly if we're lucky, $2.5 million in new free cash every year. And back before we received, we had all the new commercial development in town, from Patriot Place, Chestnut Green, Foxborough Lodge. Every year we would generate that free cash, and then we would appropriate it for the following year. It's actually a year lag in between, for the operating budget and for the capital budget, and would typically allocate 60% of what we had for operating and 40% for capital. And then when 10 years ago, when the economy went south and our state aid dropped, we used all of the free cash to prop up the operating budget to maintain as much of the services as we could, and we starved out the capital program. So we've been slowly recovering there from that. But the good news is we got all of that extra cash from permitting fees and the like. With all the new development, we used that to then engineer what I call a soft landing when we had the next economic down cycle that started in 2008, the end of 2008. And so we were able to, again, maintain services because of how we managed our free cash. And so we're still looking to, after we allocate about $1.5 million to the operating budget this year, that's the recommendation, and this $1.35 million this year to capital. It's a good number. I want to explain where the extra pieces came from. We're still looking to carry forward $1.4 million in free cash, and then we want to regenerate again. So we still haven't burned through all of those reserves. So we've shown some good restraint there, and that's important. The strength of our balance sheet and our reserves is an important thing to do. The reason we have as much as we do in free cash to commit to the capital budget is, if you recall, last year we made a loan to for a fire capital item from free cash, $361,000, because they needed to replace that engine. They were on a run rate to generate all the ambulance receipts that they needed to fund that. But they'll have that money when we get to this May town meeting, but they didn't have it last year. But there's a very long lead time to order those, those big pieces of equipment. So we needed to have appropriated that amount in order for them to sign a contract and do a bid. So that $361,000 is going to be repaid from ambulance receipts and it will be available to us for the capital budget. So that was additive. And as Kevin mentioned earlier, of the $470,000 that we've identified as recurring revenues over and above what we needed to balance this year's budget, I recommended that we use $230,000 of that towards one-time items, which is the prudent thing to do, is to not commit it to things that you have to then anniversary the expense every year. So between the $361 and the $230, and then the amount that I put forward, the $750,000, I believe, from free cash, given that we had a pretty good year in free cash last year. That's how we get to the $1,350,000 to be able to bring forward. So it's a good year for capital, but the capital budget has been starved out for many years, and so we're finally being able to catch up and get things like this bucket truck is like a key item, because it's an expensive ticket, and there's a great need for it, and it's always one of those ones that's been put to the bottom, but this is a year that we can finally afford something like that.
Just had a quick, could you explain what the police apparatus revolving fund and also what the school revolving, what do you mean by?
Sure. A few years ago, we were, the police and fire chiefs realized that they could not just charge an administrative fee. We've been charging administrative fees for firefighters and police officers and EMTs who work the stadium. but they realized we could also charge a fee for the use of our vehicles up there, the police vehicles, the ambulances, or if there's a fire engine. So when those vehicles are on a detail, we can charge an administrative fee, and there's a fee schedule associated with every one of the vehicles that the police chief and the fire chief bill for every one of the details. And so, because those were funds that we wanted to have dedicated to either the repair or replacement of those vehicles that are used for those purposes, that's when we first established this revolving, called a revolving account, 53E&a-half account, where all the monies, the fees associated with the rental of those vehicles, so those details, goes into the fund, can't go anywhere else, and then town meeting approves a spending amount that can come out of it each year, and those amounts are used for either if there's a repair that needs to be made, or, and in this case here, to fund part of a replacement of a vehicle.
And the school would be,
I'm sorry, and
Same.
on the school side, the schools have several revolving funds for many of the different programs that they have. They've been very generous, over the years with what they commit to, first off, their operating budget. They commit a substantial amount of the inflow of the revolving funds to the operating budget. And then they oftentimes, and I can think of many just over the last few years, where they commit to take a chunk of funds out of those revolving accounts to put towards a one-time item, a capital item, which is what they've proposed here. They've stepped up in a big way for the security cameras, and they did for for the field project as well. With the lunch fund, they replaced refrigeration equipment. So they look at those. Those are sort of like reserves and for one time, but they do use the recurring piece to a great deal just to fund the operating budget. So they're very prudent in how they commit those funds to town services.
so the revolving fund from the schools, that's like if you rent the high school auditorium or
Yes.
something, so that's the
Right, building rental fund, those dollars would go in there. They have to pay the janitors, they have to pay, pay for the heat and the electricity, for that. And then there are some funds that accrue, and then they can use them to replace things that are building related.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Question about the bucket truck. This was on last year and wasn't approved. Last year I thought there was discussion about there being certain safety concerns with using a bucket truck, and that was part of the reason why it was not.
That was to go over the wires and work
For the
above
electricity, yeah.
the wires owned by
National Grid.
Nation Grid, yeah, and that was advised not to. So, but this is to replace a dated one that we have now, and that's just in last year we got.
It's
the
30
chip
years
up.
old,
Yeah.
pardon me. And if, I know we all know you, but for the people at home, you can
I'm
use-
Roger Hill, DPW Director.
Sounds sick.
That truck is, the chassis is 30 years old. The lift is 27 years old. When they got the new lift, the chassis was really not heavy enough for that lift, and the lift doesn't go up very high. It's only a 55-foot truck. And like I said last year, we got some big, tall pines in this town that we can't reach with that truck. And now the bucket is powered by hydraulics, but on an old truck, Mark knows, we have a power takeoff on the transmission instead of a hydraulic pump on the front of the crankshaft, and that's bad because that power takeoff periodically falls out of the transmission, and if a guy's 55 feet up in the air when it falls out, he has to stay up there until we get out there and put that back in.
You can use the old hand crank.
Yeah, we could. Except that there's nobody, other than Toaster, nobody strong enough to bring it down. So it's been on there a long time, Lorraine, and not just last year. It was on virtually, I think, 6 or 7 years in a row. And it looked, finally, I mean, we're in a position now, we started to lose the inner hoses in the arm itself, and that's not good. That's a dangerous situation.
So it will be used for work not related to
Right.
the trimming around wires or
Right,
anything like that?
we don't trim around wires at all.
Okay.
And the other thing is that it's easy to relate this. It lasts 30 years, maybe more. The new ones will probably last a little longer because they're diesel powered. And if you take down one tree a year, that's $6,300 a year that you would get for that bucket truck. And we take down 50 or 60, so sometimes over 100. So we will pay for it very quickly. Because that's what I would have to pay Tree Tech to come in and take down one of those big trees, about $6,800, so.
And other than trees, you use it for buildings as well? And
We use it
building
for
maintenance?
everything. We clean out the gutters on the town hall, the safety building, and the senior center, and the DPW garage. We put when we lose the cables on the flagpole at the common, we use it to replace the cables. I mean, it's used for a variety of things. The other thing it's good at is it can reach a long way out to the side, and my well roads really need help, so.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions while we have the department heads at our meeting?
I'm good.
Okay, so the CIP that's presented is $3,647,576, and everything that's on that CIP fiscal year 14 plan is on Appendix A, which is at the front of the budget. So I'd like to
You want a motion to
entertain a
approve?
motion.
Motion to approve the CIP plan for FY14 for $3,647,576.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great.
Randy, thank you for the
And
help,
thank you.
and thank you everyone on the CIP. And to the people that did not get their things funded, I think there was nothing on the CIP that we pulled off. It'll come back next year and we'll reevaluate it.
Exactly. It's still in the 5-year plan, still on the radar.
Can I have the old bucket truck?
We're gonna trade it in, Mark.
I know, Roger. I'm
Turn it into a dirt bike, huh?
kidding. No. My kid would have a blast with that thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a CIP, 7:30, we're about a half an hour late. The fiscal year 14 operating budget, which is the following pages after Appendix A.
Sure, members of the board, we gave you a brief presentation last week, so I won't repeat that. The budget is presented to you. It's balanced with approximately $470,000 in revenue that we will not need to levy. We've just committed $230,000 of that to the capital budget. We'll be recommending, under one of the other articles, we commit another $150,000 of that to surplus, to stabilization, so we've essentially used that. There's a little bit of surplus left, but not a lot.
Which, if I could just clarify, that's part of the free cash funding for the operating budget, so it'll be free cash that we won't use, that'll come back into reserve.
The board last week voted a reduction to the HR budget, 9965, I think was the number. I have concurred with that in my budget. So, and I have, so that will show, that's the only thing you voted so far. The remainder of the budget needs to be dealt with. I have taken that 99 and moved it into my recommendation in the Board of Health budget for the reasons I described to you last week, in order to provide additional inspection capability at the stadium. So my budget recommendation actually remains balanced exactly as it was, but with those two numbers changed. Other than that, it's identical to what you had in last week's handout. Your budget, if you for some reason didn't concur with that 9,900 being moved over to Board of Health, you'd be 9,900 more surplus than my budget is. So those are the only changes since you were given that presentation last week. And again, we've got most of the major department heads here, and of course Randy and I, to answer any questions that you might have about the budget.
Any questions from the board? Lorraine?
I have a question about the positions in the police budget, the new positions. We'd had discussions about the need for the coverage of that additional shift at Patriot Place. And, you know, it's something that we haven't had time to hear an analysis of, a revisit to the COF report and look at the impacts and hear about the costs of injuries and,
Yeah, I had-
incident responses.
Yeah,
So-
I had hoped to try to present you with that, but it's just I got run over by the report truck and the budget and the town meeting truck. But
Actually, I met with Kevin today, and I think we had said either the next agenda is pretty full. We're gonna shoot for the 16th or the following.
yeah, now,
And
you'll
just-
have it probably within 2 weeks in writing. We won't be able to get it on an agenda probably till the night of the 16th, I'm guessing, is the first agenda where it isn't just tremendously packed. And actually, 16th is pretty packed. But we might have time to get a quick presentation that night. I'd like to engage the board in a discussion before town meeting for the exact reason you're talking about, so that you'll see why we've got this new police position in the police budget. Because I think once you see the presentation, you'll see it's fully justified. But it's just a timing thing,
Yeah, but I think part of the questions, just so that you know in advance, is that whether that should be part of the actual operating budget, or if it should be approached as a detail, so that there's not the long-term impact of pension commitments to the town. And, I think it all does tie in together, obviously. So from a timing standpoint, I'm just asking that there be consideration to look at that position. I don't know if it's to put it on hold until next year, until there can be really the analysis that needs to be done and the discussions that have to happen.
I would respectfully suggest to the board that the position is needed either way. Now, at some point, we will be coming forward to the board with that report and with what I'm very optimistic is going to be a presentation from the craft organization so that we can do some partnering. Mm-hmm. It's really pretty easy because we have vacancies every year, typically 1 or 2 or 3 due to retirements, people changing. So if we decide, we have a good offer, we work something out, and we want to take that position out, there'll be a vacancy next year, we take it back out. I don't think, all the sources that the chief and I have looked at, whether it's the FBI standard, the Mass Chief standard, the International Chief standard, we are below the per capita police officer standards of virtually every single index in America. Part of the reason we have a fairly substantial overtime budget is because we end up filling a lot of shifts with overtime, so we're spending over $400,000 a year in overtime. When I budgeted this new position, I cut police overtime $50,000. So I'm leveraging a very substantial cut in police overtime with this new police officer. Now, the new police officer, all in, probably costs us $75,000. So, it's not a full offset, but it never is, and anybody that tells it that is just not analyzing it correctly. But we are trying to make some reduction in overtime with this new officer. So I would say to the board, we need this new officer irrespective of what we work out up at Patriot Place for better alcohol administration. But if for some reason we're convinced somewhere down the line that that's not the case, we can change this up. Because just as fast as we end up having a vacancy, rather as soon as we fill this, I know there's a retirement pending that's likely to recreate another vacancy. So we've got plenty of opportunities to adjust if we want.
Thank you.
When I hear things like we're underspending per capita than any place in America,
No.
We're not that special.
No,
Really.
that's not what I said. I said the
actually-
standard numbers, we're not meeting any of them. That's all I said.
Right.
Lots of towns don't have what we have.
Yeah, and where this is a police budget, Chief, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. Do you want to speak to that position while you're here?
Well, you are, but that's okay.
That's all right.
If we're going to recreate history,
Mhm.
well, let's go back to the COF report, because it was clearly pointed out at that time that I envisioned the need to have 35 full-time police officers. We initially received the authority to move ahead with 3 of the positions. And due to, again, the financial collapse that Randy was discussing earlier, the other component did not happen. Now, in the past year, we had picked up one of those 4 positions. This year, by the plan submitted by the town manager, we're again addressing one of those needs. And when I say needs, it is a need because of the call volume that we have, not just at Patriot Place, but across the community. And certainly, Ms. Brew has contacted me, and we had a very brief discussion, but I haven't done any financial analysis about the impact of doing something with whether it's detail or overtime to try and figure it out. But I'm still very sure that my proposal of 6 years ago is still valid in terms of when I take a look at the work that's being done by the staff and by the call hours that are committed to handling calls for service that reduces preventative activities in the community.
Okay, thank you. So, again, we invited the craft organization to come in a couple meetings ago to say where they think they're pulling the resources from public safety. And Kevin's putting together our analysis, and you know, in the best, maybe they're identical or maybe are above or below, but in the next couple meetings, you'll present that back with input from the police chief and fire chief.
Yep.
And I think that will answer a lot of this with respect to the COF report. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the mitigation monies from Patriots Place, that goes into free cash?
The mitigation money we received.
Yeah, like it's 140.
Oh, the 140,000. Actually, we use that. That's part of the local receipts.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if we collect, I'm going to use round numbers here, about $8 million in local receipts, and we target about $1.5 million not to spend. Depending on how you look at it, it's either in the, you know, the 6.5 that we commit, or it's in the 1.5 that we don't commit. But so it ultimately, you know, either fund services or falls out to free cash, which, and you can, you know, I can't trace every dollar, you know, which one goes to operating, which one goes to capital, but since that funding source will end, it ends in, I think it's 5 years or 4 years. So it's one of those funding sources that you don't want to depend on a recurring basis. So I'd like to think that we're putting into the capital budget.
But the thing is that, you know, safety first, and, you know, the chief's waited for, you know, several years now, and I think, you know, this is an important position to be filled, so, you know, we just need to keep our eye on that. My only other question was, I had asked you before, Kevin, about showing us, you know, the money savings that we've done from Public Works, and at some point, I know our agenda's filled because I heard it 3 times tonight, how filled we are, but at some point, I think it's important for us to see, you know, our cost savings going with the Public Works, and, you know, even if it's just bringing up that spreadsheet that you had given us at.
Yeah, when the DPW was proposed to go together,
Right.
there was estimated savings. Now,
Yeah.
you know, with staff merged and moved around in equipment and housing, there should be a way that we can put together a before and after.
Sure, we'll get that done for you.
Well, you would think that would be part of his goals and objectives. I mean, as far as his report next week, right? Probably,
I don't know if that's
No,
a
I
charge.
will not have it done by next week.
no,
I
I'm
don't know
talking
that's
about,
a.
I thought we asked the town manager to put together
Well, he,
It's a self-evaluation.
evaluation,
and
that would be something that would
Yeah.
be part of that. I would think that'd be mentioned in it.
one of the goals and objectives we
Was-
had last year was not to
Mention-
put it together. That was the year before.
Mentioned, yes. Analyzed, no.
Detail, no.
It's sort of, these days, I'm picking and choosing between what report would you like me to write first, because I got 5 of them that you've asked for backed up
Pick
right
me.
now. So, there you go. So, right now, my order is to get you a quarterly report. I'm not gonna do a big analysis. I'm just gonna give you the quarterly report on the current goals, updated, here's where we are. Then the next goal is to get this this Patriot Place liquor police use memo written. That is a giant piece of work. It's huge. So those are my two goals, and that's going to take a lot of time. And then, of course, I've got the TIF report I'm trying to get finalized in the next couple of days. So it's this time of year is just mind-boggling how much work comes crushing together at the same time. So those are the three priorities, and they'll all get done in the next 2 weeks, but not a lot more than that.
Did you have a intern that was helping you out with the?
Yes, thank goodness. If I didn't have the intern, forget about it. I wouldn't have been able to do this for 6 months.
Because I thought he was.
Yeah, he
working
did
on
a
the
great
police.
job, and the chief was wonderful, and his staff in pulling, the statistics together. And then we met several times, massaged them, I juggled them up, re-expressed them. They did a great job. Now I got to get this narrative written that actually takes all these spreadsheets and pie charts and says, here's what all this stuff means.
Just for everybody, for Kevin's evaluation, that quarterly report, the update of those goals, because the last report we had was in December, that's what I'll be using to cut and paste into the forms that you'll have for the evaluation, so you'll see the status of where it is
Yep.
right now, and then you evaluate on that, okay?
Great.
Any other questions on the budget, fiscal 14 budget? Okay, do I have a, well, just for clerical, so the budget that we have in front of us, it's the same amount, but the item moved from item number 124, the human resources, over to Board of Health.
Right, 127
It was actually
to 510.
Okay, I thought we moved it to 124 to match
Well,
that.
124 was.
Yeah,
was the
initially,
typo on
what,
that thing?
yeah, initially, I apologize for that. 124 was a department that we no longer use because we consolidated that Southeastern Regional Service fee of $4,000 into the administration budget. And when I initially did that cover sheet, I thought it was vacant, but then when I went to pull together the warrant, I saw, I still have to show activity from 3 years
This is the
ago.
first
So it's
time we've had
127
that.
for the
Human
HR
resources.
department.
And where does it move to on the Board of Health?
510 salaries.
Salaries.
Okay, because since this is the only thing that we can vote on,
And the number is 9975 that the town manager is recommending to go into the 510 number. And I've already noted that you've taken it, it's been voted out of the 127 expenses.
okay. All right, do I have a motion? Anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to approve the town manager recommended operating budget in total $59,838,375 for fiscal year 2014.
Second.
Motion made by Lorraine, seconded by Mark. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Where do you get that? Just want to have a 60.
Yeah, 59.
Oh, this one.
That's this one here.
That's a cover page.
Okay. Randy, thank you.
Thank you.
Putting all that
Thank you,
together.
Randy.
Thank you.
Randy,
Kevin,
thanks,
thank you.
As
Kevin.
usual.
Very much.
Great job.
And all the department heads that you worked with. Okay. Being 8:20,
Oh,
we have
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to give these to you. It's not on the agenda for tonight, but I wanted you to have it. Article 6, because you'll be voting on that. It's sort of part of the budget, but it's done under Article 6, not under the budget. So I wanted to give you this. And it's also not part of the budget per se, but it could have budgetary manifestations. You'd wanted a salary and health insurance survey for boards of selectmen in our 15 comparable town list, and that survey's done. Again, the intern's doing some great work. I don't know that that'll have a budgetary impact, but it could, so I just wanted to give it to you so you can consider that in case it has any impact.
Are we paid less than everywhere in America, too?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah,
Awesome.
but underworked
Be a record
happily,
holder.
so that's good.
Oh, you are whoa underpaid.
Well, it's only every other
Tim.
week, Jim.
There you go.
Yeah, but those are all weekly salaries on those other towns. And the city's
We'll get that later.
the city's a city
Move on.
council.
Yeah, whatever.
And I apologize, Bill, I see you sitting there, and you had an item, and I said I'd take it out of order. I thought you were here for the CIP and the budget.
It was interesting though, right?
In our packets is an action item that, well, I'll let Bill explain what that is. Sorry about that, Bill.
No problem. I apologize, actually, for having to come back on this, but the problem with the MSBA's wording, which has got to be very specific, is that anytime you adjust the actual document online, it changes the date. So, you know, we've done some corrections as far as wording, as far as making sure we're specific to SPED programs and things like that, and it changed the date, and we didn't realize that. So when we contacted the MSBA on it, they said it's very simple. Just change, instead of having form dated February 25th, just have it for the statement of interest that's being submitted for April 10th. Then you can do anything you want up until April 10th, making your corrections and adjustments. So effectively, what I need is your wording
On the motion?
on the motion to look like this. The only thing that's changing is the yellow highlighted item. And again, that's changing from February 24th, I believe, to the wording you see there that's highlighted.
And you've got those minutes to sign in that folder over there, I believe.
So the question is, you can do it one of two ways. You can either vote approval of this as it is tonight and ignore your minutes, and then this document itself would be signed and go forward. Or you can open up your minutes and fix that one wording section and approve the minutes that way. You can do it either way according to the state. The school committee is going to actually open up their minutes, correct the wording, and revote the minutes.
Because you have to submit the minutes, correct? With this?
Well, they also have changed. I have to submit the minutes on the school side. I only have to submit this document signed and certified by the town clerk for your side. So it's a little simpler in that perspective. I don't have to, submit your whole wording from your minutes in this process, so.
Seems like it would be easier to approve this than change, because I'd have to do it.
Right.
by hand.
So resolved, having convened in an open meeting on March 26, 2013, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, have voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest forms to be submitted by April 10th for the Borough Elementary School located at 16 Moore Street, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the prior categories for which an application may be submitted to the Mass School Building Authority in the future. And then there's 2 pages of the items of replacement and repair. And then we make a motion, second it, and we vote tonight. So do I hear a motion to accept this letter and form?
You have to move to reconsider or not?
Yeah.
No, because if you're doing what Lorraine just said, you're actually just voting this.
Let's do
So
it.
your other minutes stay intact, you're just effectively voting the change as a whole new item. So it would be reflected into this week's minutes as a new vote for this, and I would just be signing this.
Wayne, you got this?
Yes. So you've made the motion?
You.
I
Okay.
read it, so
Okay.
maybe
So
someone
motion
wanted
to approve the revised letter to the MSBA for the statement of interest to be submitted by April 10th for the Borough Elementary School.
Okay, motion made,
Second.
seconded by Mark. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
All right, motion carries 5-0. So you need this signed, obviously by April 10th, but we should be able to do that tonight.
So what I'll do is I'll go back and actually put in who voted and make what the vote was, and I'll ask the town clerk to certify it tomorrow.
So
Okay.
do you need
You
the
don't need
minutes
our-
from,
No,
Tonight.
what I guess would probably be good for the town clerk is if on one of these copies, that information was put in so that he would have a signed version to be able to approve it. He
Okay.
needs to certify the fact that this vote happened today.
That, and maybe we can correct last week's minutes to read. Should we
we
correct
already
that
did
to
it.
read the 10th or no?
I don't think we should change
then
minutes.
we'd have
No,
to.
we already did it.
It's like changing history.
We'd have to
Yeah.
move to reconsider because it
Okay.
would be the
But
same.
on this form, it says motion by, so it would be Lorraine, seconded by Mark, and the vote was 5-0.
Right.
And you're saying that's not enough to bring forward?
That should be enough for him to be able to certify it.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Very good.
No signatures, nothing? I thought,
Just the town clerks.
all right.
So I don't have to put this whole thing in.
No, no. No. All right.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Bill.
Thank you, I apologize.
No worries. Glad we could help.
No action,
Uh,
Go on,
Yeah,
right?
before we go into executive session, there were 2 action items, if I can find them.
There's a few action items.
Okay, that was the first one. So, the March 19th Board of Selectmen minutes. I got it here. Okay. Any comments on the March 19th?
I have a corrected version that Ginny inserted a paragraph. Do you want to read that?
I'll get the same thing. Oops, sorry. On page 3, I just wanted to add, after we did the motion to deem the dog dangerous, and so I just wanted to insert, Mrs. Capola asked if a letter had to be sent out to the neighborhood stating that the dog had been deemed dangerous, and she was told no.
In the future, the board could make that a stipulation, but we didn't, so we didn't wanna,
Yep.
you know. but
Right,
so
well, I just wanted that on the record that that was brought up.
It was.
I
Thank you.
had, pass that down. I had a change in a question. On page 2, I just wanted to insert on the second to last paragraph before Mr. Seaman. It says, Mr. Seaman, I wanted to add, Mr. Seaman was informed that he had the option of having legal counsel present, and he stated he understood that.
Yep, it's good.
And it's also sermon.
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 Spelt wrong?
Yeah.
I copied it off the agenda.
Oh, that'll get you too.
Thanks, guys.
What's the correct spelling on that, Ginny?
S-E-R.
Seermon.
Just gotta put a R in there.
Did you do that on purpose?
I didn't take these.
And then a question on page 7, it said the stadium paid $38,500 for 65 hours of inspection last year, and then it says they are agreeing to pay this amount again next year and will not be asking for any kind of refund. Is that what was discussed,
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yep.
Bill,
Yep.
okay.
And while you're on page 7, Jim, is that all you had on page 7?
Yep.
Because on the end, I guess, where it says, the human resource manager has withdrawn her request, but she is still entitled to change her mind, right? At the end of that, Kevin stated, Mr. Pecos recommended keeping the amount in the budget and that the request from the employee had not been withdrawn.
Formally.
Formally, all right, good call, formally I'll go with, because that should be, that's important, it's on there.
On page 8, in the second paragraph, it has national heritage, it should be natural. Natural heritage.
She must have been watching the movie.
And then halfway down where it says, Mr. DeVellis wanted to know why the TIF proposal is at the end of the warrant. I think the discussion was Mr. DeVellis wanted to discuss the TIF proposal. I wrote it down for you, being at the end of the warrant. A brief discussion was held, and the order remained as is. It's a little hard to read my writing, but that's all I had on those.
I move to approve the minutes of March 19th as amended.
Motion made to approve,
Second.
seconded by Mark. All those, more the discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries 5-0. We have a hacky license, 2 hacky licenses for Donald Marco and Ramaswamy Cortegeri.
And the renewals, Jim, correct? They're not
Renewals.
Renewals.
Yep. On the first one, Donald Marco.
Motion to approve his hacky license application for
Motion-
renewal.
Yep, motion made,
Second.
seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And motion made for the second renewal.
Motion to renew the hacky license application for Ramaswamy Cortegori.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded further. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. And then we have an approval to the appointment of Sue Thibodeau as animal inspector. Sue Thibodeau as our animal control officer.
Motion to approve Sue Thibodeau as the approval to the appointment of animal inspector.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And then a request for 2013 common vitulers license for Cupcake Charlie's at 262 Patriots Place.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, further discussion.
Yeah, I'm
Looking forward to it.
Did you? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And under Town Manager, we have the warrant for a special state primary to be held on Tuesday, April 30th, 2013, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the John J. Ahern Middle School.
So moved.
So is it, this warrant, they're both are gonna be on the same, it's gonna be
Yes.
two separate warrants, or one warrant with
Oh, no,
this
two
added to it?
separate
Two
warrants.
separate, okay.
Right?
No, the warrant, though. I
One
didn't know if
election,
this-
two separate
Yeah,
ballots.
okay.
Actually, I don't know if they're gonna combine the ballots or not. I don't think so.
No.
I think you're gonna draw two
Randy's
ballots.
giving me the double agreement,
They'd
there's
have
no
to be because it's
combined.
primary.
Yeah, it's
So-
two separate.
Yeah, you'd have to be, because one's a primary and
One,
one's
yeah,
town.
one's
Right,
like,
yeah, I
Well,
don't,
that
yeah.
was like the biggest thrill
Yeah,
for Steve Uden. He was on the national ballot with the presidents, and he, I mean, something that was pretty cool. When we got elected to the Southeastern Regional, he was on that ballot with the president, and it's, you know, something you'd frame.
Hope and change. Was there a motion?
Yes.
Was it seconded?
Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, before you go into executive session, we have a training session coming up. I know you mentioned it next week, last week rather. If I could, I'd like to mention it again. It's the NIMS 700 National Incident Management System Training, Monday, April 1st, from 6:30 to 9:30 at the McGinty Building. And it's for any person in town who might ever volunteer during an emergency situation. There's a number of different kinds, but basically it's so that people understand how the whole emergency system works and everybody's place in it. Not required training for people to volunteer, it's just really good if they can, because then they understand where everything fits. So again, that's Monday, April 1st, 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the McGinty Room. And if people are interested, if they could please call the Board of Health office, 543-1207. Talk to the Secretary, Debbie Jarvis, they get registered so that we don't overflow, because there's a possibility. And board members are very warmly welcome. I think a couple of you have already
Signed up,
indicated
yeah.
you're going.
are we supposed to go to both the 1st and the 8th, or is it the same thing? or is
Two
it-
separate things,
It's
two
two
different
separate
nights,
things.
yeah.
One's ICS 100 and the other was NIMS 700.
Okay,
To be honest with you, both
gonna
are great if you can go, but one or the other is fine,
okay.
you know.
And if anybody knows Lauren Guitar, I mean, you can go on the website, but she's a good resource. She
Yep.
has the stuff at her fingertips.
Yep.
And then also in the information packet, Comcast grandfather cable packages, price adjustments. And then we have public hearing on the compost site for March 21st, but I don't know why it's in this packet.
Very, very happy to let you all know, thanks to a lot of good work by staff, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board, and Tree Tech, we were able to get all the issues worked out, come to an amicable agreement. It was a huge amount of work put in by a lot of really good faith people. We got it all done. The compost area will open for the townspeople on time, April 1st. But believe me, this was a huge amount of work to get it done. And there's still a lot of things that have to happen. But awful lot of good faith people, and I want to single out in particular. Actually, I shouldn't do that, because if I do, I'll leave someone else. But Planning Board, Concom were fantastic, and key staff were wonderful and really worked very hard to make it all happen. And Tree Tech was very helpful too, so, good news.
Good to hear. Okay, anything else before we go into executive session? Someone
move
like
that
to make a motion?
That we go into executive session to discuss strategy for collective bargaining, negotiations with non-union personnel, and review of executive session minutes, only to return in order to adjourn.
Okay, motion made,
Second.
seconded. Further discussion? Linda?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
I say yes, so
Got all
5-0.
the names right
I know.
tonight.
Thank you. Take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.